Welcome to the Oh So Spurs podcast, and it's a Christmas Eve special. Rick in Australia, this one's for you, mate, because I know you were in the comments asking for an episode over Christmas. But we had to get something in over Christmas, even if we're a depleted crew this evening, aren't we, Deej?
That we are.
But yeah, should we start the game, Deej? I was obviously there, but it'd be great to get your perspective from viewing the game, on the TV and what you made of it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, wish I could have been there. Next time everyone's at the ground, I'll do my best. But watching the game from over here, I think the first thing that I noticed, and I know that there's a lot of sentiment from American, and I guess I don't know how broadcasting works, but for American fans specifically, if there's any other Americans who are watching, I want to know if anyone else found the commentary as insufferable as I did, because I think it was uniquely bad this week, and I think I've seen some other people saying something similar. But outside of that, really good first 20 minutes. I don't want to talk about the other 70, really.
But the first 20 were so good.
Scintillating.
It was like those 20 minutes packed in probably more good football than I experienced in the whole entirety of Nuno, Conte and Mourinho put together. And then everything just went back to like it was watching Conte's Tottenham again. But it was that build up to the goal that was. It wasn't a goal. Royale was fouled, but there was the three flickbacks. It was just that was a glimpse of, I think, Pete Ange when we've got all the signings that he needs to make this work.
Yep.
And from when you were viewing it, because I didn't have the kind of luxury of replays, what was your perspective on the general refereeing performance as well? Because it felt like it was leading their way, but
I mean, it was, I think it was a pretty even refereeing performance, because I think I've seen both sets of fans argue over marginal calls, which I think is probably the best way to go if you're going to go. I think, obviously you're never going to get everything 100% correct. I think you give a few calls their way, you give a few calls our way. I think the first goal being chalked off was, I think, pretty inarguably correct. I think that Royale was fouled. He was asking for the foul, but that doesn't make it any less of a foul. There was some tugging and pulling in the penalty area, but that's never been given really as anything before, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I don't see why it would change for our game. So I think overall, decent refereeing performance, all things considered.
Yeah, it felt like their disallowed goal, like everyone in the stadium, we kind of knew it was so blatantly a foul. We were like, if VAR doesn't overturn that, we're all going to be absolutely outraged. It's going to be picked apart on Twitter for the next 6 months with different angles of replays, calling refs corrupt and all that kind of stuff, like every fan base does at the moment. But I felt overall, I thought, the ref had he tried to let most things go and was relatively even when he called players up on it. So no complaints there. But performance-wise, what did you make of the two goals?
The two goals, wonderful. I thought that everything was really good. I thought that the build-up play for the first goal was absolutely wonderful, with that weighted ball from Sarr into Johnson, and then the run from Richarlison, obviously, to go around his man just to have an easy near post finish. I thought Brennan Johnson had a really good first 30 minutes, and then I think the game got a bit too physical for him, which is something that I think we'll need to take into account when other teams. I mean, I'm sure people have seen that I think we're the most fouled team in the league at the moment.
Yeah.
So teams are going to go kick us up and down the pitch. It'll kind of depend on the referee to rein that in, and fair play to the referee. I think that he did that pretty well. I think Onana got a card pretty early in the game, which kind of prevented him from being as much of a physical presence, I'll say, as he probably would have liked to be. But I do think as the game went on, I think that you kind of get foul fatigue, which isn't necessarily the referee's fault in any way. But I think that Johnson probably didn't. He had a couple of kicks that could have been yellows on other days, but in the first 30 minutes, he looked really good. He also had that chance he probably should have finished.
I think, regular listeners would know that I'm more desperate than anyone else for Johnson to work. But that game for me, where he was a little bit disappointing as a fan of the stadium, was, like you're saying, the first 20. I thought he's got to have credit towards both goals, because his shots resulted in effectively leading to kind of an assist towards a goal or whatever. But as it got very gritty and Everton found rhythm, he just didn't have that physical presence to contribute to the team and help us absorb the pressure. And it felt like, I think there was one incident in particular where it was like a 60-40 in his favour, and he was the quicker player, and you thought, that's Johnson's ball, we're through on goal, and he just backed out. And to be fair, I imagine that's down to cracking his head open just a week ago and feeling a little bit naturally nervous about running head on into a 50-50 challenge. But it was a mixed performance for him. Like you say, I think for 30 minutes, I thought, great, we're finally getting the side of Johnson I hoped we'd have. And then the rest of the game, it was like, he's not made for that. I'd rather in those kind of games, we had rotation options to say, this isn't the right environment for him, and play him to his strengths when it's the right kind of game for him. But that's what it's all about, having a squad of options, isn't it? So
Yeah, I think like you said, I think it's a bit unfair to expect him to go flying into every challenge with a cracked open skull. Also, I think that it's kind of, I mean, he's not the youngest anymore, but he's certainly not necessarily at his physical prime yet. I think just put him in the lab with Mike Jedinak, and he'll handle everything. I think that we can. I think he could do with a little bit of bulking up, obviously, but I think that's something that'll just come with time. I don't think we need to necessarily be too worried on that front yet.
No, and it just feels like, I think we know the real reason why the squad kind of always seems to fall off in the second half at the moment, and that it is partly down to the fact that we've got some really good players, but with the injuries, no squad would have much depth left, and we have nothing left. And as soon as one or two players depart from the pitch, from our first 11, you just see the drop off is insane. Like, they do a good job, the players you bring in, like Skip, can't fault the guy for a third choice. He is great, and he's got a good work ethic, and he's better than what most teams have as their emergency option. But he is still an emergency option, as is Davies, who's done fantastic. He's better than any other team's emergency centre-back, but he's still a massive drop-off from Mickey van der Ven. And when Romero comes off, we've got a massive drop-off. At one point, I think we had Højbjerg, Royale, and Dyer as our centre-backs, like playing as three at the back. Like, that is just so starkly off, like, what our strongest back three or back two would even be. So you can understand why it's kind of like such a different performance once we lose a few legs. And Romero clearly pulled his hamstring in the first 5 minutes, and I felt that drop-off was quickly felt as well.
Yeah, I think that we're being a little bit. I know some people were talking about, there was some discourse on Twitter, as there always is, about how Ange handled substitutions in this game, and I can see how on face value you could be disappointed in the the choices that were made. But I think if you look at our squad depth, I think the choice between playing Romero another 45 minutes and risking an injury, especially because it's come out now that he should be fit for Brighton. If you take that risk and he gets injured and he's gone for 3-4 months or worse, I just don't think that we're in a position where we can chance that.
Agreed.
Same thing with Richarlison, really, because he came off with like a back problem. I don't know. I haven't heard anything on him, so I'm hoping that that's not too serious either. But I think that at this point, I think we need to be really precautionary with potential injuries, because it's not like you just randomly pull a hamstring sometimes. Sometimes, it gets tight, you feel it, and then the coach says, "Oh well, play through it," and then you tear it. And like we can't handle anything like that at this point.
Yeah, agree. And as I think it's Wigsy in the group, we all know him, but he's actually a qualified physio, and he was saying that if it's a tight hamstring, you'd always remove the player, because it literally is different from reducing to like a light training load for 3 days and then being back to full fitness, to then making that pull or a strain, and they're out for weeks and weeks and weeks. So Ange had absolutely no choice. But you look at the bench, I hate this culture sometimes in football clubs where it's like, the manager got it wrong, didn't do the substitutions right. And you look at the bench, like, what's he supposed to do when his options are Forster, Phillips, Veliz, Donnelly, Dorrington, and Dyer? Like, it doesn't matter what you do with those substitutions, you are still going to see a massive drop-off compared to the player that they're replacing. And if you're forced to replace that player, he's got no choice but to just try and mitigate damage, which is what he's done. And how on earth we find ourselves 4 points off the top, despite losing 4 games in a row, with this many injuries is insane. It gets me so excited for even if we were to have worst case scenario, we lose our next 3 games, we're still going to most likely be within 10 points of the title. And then all of those injured players, Bentancur, Van der Ven, Maddison, plus we want a couple more in January, all coming back at once. That's still something you can chase down in 18 games. So it is. I still think it's insane how good Ange has done up until this point. Like the turnaround is just ridiculous.
It's been wonderful to watch most of the time. I won't say there have certainly been times where I've not enjoyed Ange ball. I mean, realistically, the last 70 minutes of the most recent game is one of those examples. I think that might have been the worst we've played all season, but I don't think that's necessarily his fault. I mean, we need to take into account we're missing half our squad. We have to take 2 more off because of injury. We're playing probably the most informed team in the league at the moment, and we had a fairly comfortable first 30 minutes. Absolutely played them off the pitch. Then after injuries started taking their toll, held on for a 2-1 win. Shout out to Vicario for making that possible. And shout out to Double Agent Danjuma for not putting a second one in, even though he had several chances to do so.
How that stayed out,
I have no idea.
But that, to be fair, we've had, I think, enough bad luck over the last 5 games to say, hey, that's just averages balancing out, because we might have only got a point today, but we deserved 3 points in the games we got nothing from. Aston Villa is like, as a game, I feel like we play that game 10 times, like that, 7 times or 6 times we win it. And we come out, and then the other 2 times we draw it, and once we lose it. But we lost it. And that's what it is. But that Everton game is kind of the reverse. I think you play like that 10 times, you probably only win it once or twice, but we did. So, yeah, I'm not going to complain. Chelsea lost. Liverpool and Arsenal drew. City lost, didn't they?
City didn't play. They played in the Club World Cup.
That was it. But all the teams around us dropped points. And Brighton are starting. We got them next. And De Zerbi's starting to do that thing where he's like, as a manager, you kind of feel that they're losing their grip a bit when they start blaming the transfer policy of the club in the press. You start to say, well, I'm forced to play young players. All the excuses start to, you start to think, could this be a good time to be playing them?
I mean, yeah, I think that they're still a very good team, but I think that they didn't necessarily, as we see with a lot of teams getting into Europe proper for the first time, you just don't really realize the effect that it's going to have on a squad until you get there. And I mean, kind of the reverse is true for us this season, where even despite having the kind of injury crisis we've had, we've been able to more or less give a good account of ourselves in every game this season, with the exception of maybe the Chelsea one. But even then, I still think we gave a pretty good account of ourselves, all things considered. Whereas just going and not only just playing the games, but having to travel, because especially in the Europa League, where you're going to, I think they had a Greek team in their group. And then they had Ajax and Marseille, I think. So it just that extra workload, that extra travel, it's going to take a toll on the team. And
that's true.
I think that they're kind of having to deal with the effects of that right now. So it is definitely good to play them while they're still in those European competitions.
Yeah, agree. It's but just jumping back to the Everton game, we're going to preview the Brighton game properly after Christmas when everyone's back. But you touched on it there, but a lot of talk goes around about who's the signing of the summer. Is it Declan Rice? Is it James Maddison? It's neither of those. It's Big Vic, isn't it? Like, goalkeepers have to work. What happened there? Goalkeepers have to work so much harder to get any. Like, if you just look at the Ballon d'Or, right? 8 times out of 10, it's a forward player. It's just they score the goals. They get the plaudits. Occasionally, it's a fancy midfielder. It's so rare a goalkeeper, and it's the same when you look at signings. I just feel like Vicario, how much he's done for us is just as good and important as having a world-class striker up front banging in 25 plus goals over the course of the season. When you look at the reverse and how many he's preventing going in, particularly with this injuries crisis at centre back.
Yeah, no, especially looking at the other two high-profile goalkeeper signings that were made this summer, and just comparing not only the performances but also the price points that these were gotten at. I think that Vicario was absolutely the signing of the summer. I mean, looking at someone like Onana, who I think is probably being a little bit overhated because he's playing in front of a really bad back line and I mean, no one's going to succeed in there right now. It's just not possible. They're in a similar situation to where we were, I think, a few seasons ago, where it wouldn't have mattered who we brought in. They were just going to fail because of the way that we played and the manager and the culture. And there are so many reasons, but I still don't think he's near as good as Vicario. And I don't think that Raya has been as good as Vicario. And like, Vicario has been one of the best keepers in the league. I'm not going to say he's the best keeper in the league, but like, if I was talking off air, I might say it. He's that good.
Would you take a swap if offered for? Because the two best keepers are Ederson and Alisson, right? You can't just say Vicario is probably on form currently the best keeper in the league, but we can't say he's better than treble winner Ederson because he's had like a good season in a relegation candidate in Italy, an amazing season at a team fighting relegation in Italy, and then a really good season for the team sitting fourth in the Premier League. That doesn't trump what Alisson and Ederson have achieved. I'm not saying that, but would you swap him for any of those? Have you ever given the chance? Personally, I'm in the camp of I would certainly not be biting your hand off.
The only one I would think about, I think, right now would be Alisson. I think Ederson is a fantastic keeper, but I do think that he benefits from playing in a system that doesn't really concede many shots, which kind of, I mean, there's a reason that the goalkeeping, there isn't more of like a goalkeeping controversy in the Brazilian national team, I think. And that's not really even a slight to Alisson. I just think that, or not to Ederson, I think Alisson's just a fantastic, fantastic keeper. He's still probably one of the best in the world. And I think that on form, I think Vicario is near him, but I still think that Alisson, I keep getting them mixed up. I think Alisson is still the best in the league at the moment.
But it's the things Vic has over them, I'm thinking, is 5 years younger, which to me is massive.
That's true. If you ask me which contract I'd rather take, I think I'd take Vic's in a heartbeat.
And then, I just find it funny that you look at Man United and Chelsea and think how much they've spent on goalkeepers trying to fix their own mess and for how many years they've been able to fix it. And we just rock up, drop 17 million quid on some guy who's completely outperformed the keepers they've spent combined over nearly over 200 million pounds on now on goalkeepers. And our one signing in Big Vic has just been straight away, just absolutely sublime. He's our signing of the summer for me anyway, and probably the Premier League signing of the summer.
I think that's very arguable. I think that I agree with you, but I do think our other two signings did get a little unlucky with injury.
True. If it was a fit Maddison all the way up to now, it would be a much and Van de Ven. I think.
I was going to say, I think a fit Maddison and a fit Van de Ven. I think we just have a three-way tie for first, which is never a bad problem to have when you're talking about signing of the summer.
No, I agree. But it's very exciting because those players are returning in the next 3 weeks, so I can't wait. And thank God for this new winter break. That is going to make the difference of us going three more games without those players instead of 6. So it's just massive for us. But does it concern you, the news that we recalled Dane Scarlett? The only reason I'm putting out the conspiracy theory here is Richarlison goes off with a back injury, and the next day we recall our emergency red button striker from loan.
Well, I think that the quote came out either at the same time. I think the quote came out around the same time as the game, if I remember correctly. So I don't think that was necessarily a thing that we hit the big red button. And I also think that we can't recall him until January 1st. I think that it was just a bad situation for Scarlett to be in, and I think that hindsight can tell you that it was, but at the time, I don't think anyone really expected Ipswich to be in the position they are in the Championship right now.
And
So,
have we reached our loan limit now as well? So only one of those players, only one of Donnelly and Scarlett is now effectively going to go out on loan.
well, Scarlett can't go back out on loan because he played for us at the beginning of the season, I believe. So he's hit his
Got you.
player limit, which I think isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, especially with Son being out for the Asian Games. I think that that's honestly like a serviceable, like, especially if Valise isn't to the point where he can get minutes yet.
Mm.
I think having a serviceable striker who's been with the club a while will give him a bit of time in January before, and
But
then
it does,
trying to
yeah,
yeah.
it does sound like Ange wants and values versatile players, and he wants a versatile forward, someone who can, based on Richarlison's last all of his games since his surgery, basically, I'm thinking he's fine. Like, fine. We got to let go of the dream of having that Harry Kane type striker, but he is good enough to score 15 plus goals in a season if he's in that kind of form, which is fine for now and really worth keeping as well. It's just he's not the thing that goes against him is he's just not a 60 million pound player, and we can't help but always look at him as you should be a 60 million pound player because that's what we paid for you. Whereas I think if we'd paid 20 million, we'd be going, yeah, he was a decent signing. Or do you
I don't
disagree?
know. I think we could have gotten him for free, and people would have still said he's shit because he's not Harry Kane. I think he's just in a really unfortunate situation. I'd also kind of say that he kind of is the new 60 million pound player. If you look at how Chelsea's spending money, if you look at
True.
how City are spending money, if you look at how United are spending money, I think compared to a lot of their 60 million pound signings, I'd take Richarlison in a heartbeat. Would you rather have him or Antony? I mean,
Yeah.
that's not even a question. Him or Sancho, easiest conversation of my life. And like, yeah, he's been a disappointment because he came through in a period of turmoil, didn't get a lot of playing time when Kane was here, and then has been playing in several different positions and through injury.
Mm.
But now that he's healthy, now that he's fit, he's scored in the last 3 games now. He's looked really he's looked really sharp, and like hopefully he can kick on from here. I think that he's not the traditional idea of a 60 million pound signing. I'd agree, but I think that the way that the football market is now, I think that he might just be a 60 million pound signing.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point, and that's fair. Chelsea have inflated it, and Man United are just so good at wasting money. We saw that they had Anthony valued at 20 million, and just by their actual club transfer team, whatever they're called, and because they're running out of time, they decided to put an offer down of 80 million, which is just insane. You at least start saying, is 30 okay? You don't just go straight to 80, but that's Manchester United and how they run themselves, which is just absolutely baffling. But the thing I always have on footballers is I can never hate a footballer for not being good enough if we chose to sign them. I can only despise them if they don't work hard. And Richarlison has always shown that he's going to give everything when he comes on. So I think as long as you have that foster of culture of everyone's there doing their best and listening to the manager and doing what's been asked of them, giving them any kind of abuse is just completely unwarranted. They're just human beings. We said, you will fit this position and do this job. You're a good fit for us and you are worth this much money in our eyes. And if they don't meet that expectation, despite doing everything we tell them to do, that's kind of on us and is not really fair to kind of be abusive towards players. And I know most people aren't actually abusive towards players, but there's always that 1% on Twitter, isn't there, that are
The ones that do all, yeah, it's ridiculous. I think I completely agree with you, especially if you consider all of the manager churn we've had. Even since he's been here, we've had 3 different people man
yeah.
the helm, and four different people man the helm. I completely forgot about Conte's second in command, whose name completely escapes me for the moment. But I kind of blocked that whole. Yep, I kind of blocked that whole memory out of my mind. I remember nothing but recording the podcast afterwards, really. But yeah, I think we could have done a lot worse than Richarlison. I'd say.
Agree.
Could have Nico Jackson.
Yeah. Actually, talking of flops, I have to give another shout out to Lo Celso. I thought he actually looked really good when he came on. I thought he was driving forward and playing some really nice. He's definitely got that position when we lose all our creativity because Maddison's not fit. Romero can't play out from the back. Van der Ven's not there to play out the back. We've got literally no ball players left. Putting Lo Celso on and putting him into a deeper role and distributing the ball via him is a good plan. Even though Ange obviously only has one plan A, like the media keeps saying, and all he does is go all out attack football and is constantly found out. It's funny that his fourth optional formation works really nicely, actually.
Yeah, it's crazy how you sub different players on that changes the formation around, and that's still plan A somehow.
Yeah.
It's almost like they see the fullbacks coming inside and say, "Oh my God, Ange ball. Nothing else matters, but the fullbacks are inside, so that's plan A still." Yeah.
You know.
I think that I want to talk a little bit more about Lo Celso because I did think he had a really, really solid 17-minute performance. I think that if he wasn't, I genuinely think that if he didn't get subbed on, I don't think we get 3 points out of that game because I can remember at least two. I'm sure there were more. I'm just pulling it from the back of my head. There were at least two times where he managed to draw out an attack that was basically just hoof the ball to Kulusevski. Kulusevski traps the ball. Shout out to Kulusevski again. Another really good performance from him. Plays it back into Lo Celso, and Lo Celso, instead of doing the thing that I think that any of the other three midfielders would have done in kind of recycling possession, he just dribbled all the way across the pitch, dribbled all the way down to the other side, found Son. Son took it to the corner, and he then either passed it back or something else happened. I think that one of those was that Johnson chance that you mentioned, where he pulled out of a challenge. But him just being able to draw out those attacks from 15, 20-second times where they weren't in our attacking third to more elongated forays into their attacking half, into their half, really let us take the pressure off of the defense for bits and pieces of the game that I think really paid dividends.
Agree. He definitely deserves it seems like he's inevitably going to go to Barcelona, but he has been very useful to us given the amount of players that are out. And Ange seems to be the first manager since we signed him that's managed to get some kind of consistency out of him to his level of ability, bar the odd injury, which kind of stunts that progression. But when he's fit, he's been solid. Can't complain at all. We do need to wrap up there. It's Christmas Eve, after all, families to get back to, but we wanted to get some content out to celebrate another fantastic weekend where, we are just flying above expectations. There's lots of things to be optimistic about. And come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs. Only a week till the window opens?
1 week to the window opens, January 1st. 2 new signings are going to roll through that door. Watch this space.
Absolutely. Come on, you Spurs.
I have cemented this top as the lucky top after that Everton game. We went on a 4-game losing streak when I didn't wear this. I put it back on, and we've seen what's happened since. So, and one other thing, if you watch this on YouTube or listen on audio, follow us on Instagram because we're going to start doing live videos from the ground when we're there on Instagram.
Ooh,
so we've only just made a page. Yeah, there you go. So do check it out, subscribe, and then you'll see the first videos going up for the Bournemouth game. We're going to get some footage up as a bit of a tester there. But Spurs, by the way, the cameras are not allowed in the ground. Microphones aren't allowed in the ground. No camera lens. They make it pretty hard, but we've got a plan. So yeah, tune in if you want to see. Up the Spurs.
Up the Spurs.